There is a journey that we are in, and this journey is led by Jesus, our Lord, who is the Counselor. Today, we welcome you again to another episode. I have with me Father Michael Karimotum, who is teaching in the Mary Mother Seminary on Holy Scriptures. I also have with me Sister Glorista, who is certified to train and also help people to counsel much better. Welcome, Father. Welcome, Sister.
Thank you.
So going into today's episode, we'll be discussing about another unique character which we find in the Bible. Let's see how the counselor worked on him. Zacchaeus, he's the character that we will discuss. Yes, Father, the floor is open.
Zacchaeus is a very, very interesting character from many angles. He is a rich man, and at the same time, he is a sinner. So in the eyes of the people. So Jesus said, it is easier for a camel to pass through the needle's eye than the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So according to the standard of Jesus, this man will never enter the kingdom of heaven. He is a rich man.
Right.
And according to the Jews, he is a traitor, he is a scandalous person who is collaborating with a foreign government, the colonial power, Rome, and is unclean. So he is out on both counts. On Jesus' account and on the account of the Pharisees, he is a man without any possibility of saving. But now the gospel tells us how this camel is passing through the needle's eye. How this person who is outside the kingdom becomes a son of Abraham and is being saved. So this is the story, and it's also interesting to see, it comes towards the end of the travel narrative. Luke is presenting Jesus traveling from North Galilee to Jerusalem on the way to cross. And it's a long time, long march, so to say. 10 chapters, from 9 to 19, the Gospel of Luke is presented as a travel narrative. Jesus traveling to his glorification, that is to come through the death and resurrection. And on this way of the cross, he is teaching about the discipleship. So here we get an interesting character who becomes a disciple of Jesus, a Zacchaeus, a publican. Zacchaeus is a rich tax officer, and he's working for the Romans. It's also good to see how the Romans worked with the tax. So they wanted to collect taxes, collect money from the colony, and they used to apportion out an area for collecting taxes, and it's something like we give contracts.
Okay.
A person can get the right of collecting taxes for this particular area, and they have to pay a certain amount to the Roman treasury.
Right.
So he can collect as much as he wants. And this person can also sublet the others as tax collectors. He is a chief tax collector, a tax officer, and there are other small collectors under him. Like Matthew, for example, he was a tax collector. Zacchaeus is a tax officer. So there is a difference. He is much higher. And much higher and much richer also. So this is the situation. And the taxes were various types. For example, they had the poll tax. Everybody has to pay a certain amount. And they had the transportation tax if you're transporting goods from one place to other. And there are so many other taxes. And the publicans, the tax collectors, were free to collect. And Rome did not fix how much one should pay. They fixed the amount, so much you should pay to the Roman treasury. The other you are free to collect. And if somebody refuses to pay taxes, then the Romans will help them with the soldiers to squeeze out. So here, the tax collectors in a very interesting position. They are between the Romans and the people. They are all Israelis, but they are collaborating with the foreign government, for the colonial power. So they were hated for two reasons. First, they were considered as traitors. They collaborate with the colonial power, something we can very well understand in our country or any colony. And the second, they were also hated for extorting money. And that's why when some of these tax collectors come to John the Baptist and ask, Master, what should we do? He didn't say you should quit the job, but you should not extort money. Don't demand more than what is needed,
Right.
or what is allowed. So don't extort. So they were forcing people out. So in this way, this Zacchaeus was a hated person.
Right, right.
Because of the people. The people did not like him because he was collaborating with the Romans. So he had all the money, but no reputation in the society. A hated or rich person. And then this man hears about Jesus. It seems he was not happy with the wealth he has. Somehow he was collecting money and spending what he wanted, but he never had the happiness in life. Then he hears about this wandering preacher, Jesus of Nazareth. Just out of curiosity, let's see who he is. He wants to. Then it is said he could not see Jesus from the crowd because of his stature. He was a small man. Can mean two things. First, maybe a short man with a big belly, so he could not. But it can be more. He's lost stature in the society.
Right.
And it may be also dangerous for him to get into the crowd. He can be easily beaten up.
Oh.
Now, there is no protection of the Roman soldiers. Now, if you get mixed in the crowd, then he can be easily beaten out. So then he makes up a point to run ahead. You can see the stout fellow running and climbing the tree. And then, so there is a kind of dialogue, so to say. There is an inner feeling in him. Somebody has inspired that feeling in him. I want to see the Master. And he has a lot of obstacles, so he is ready to humiliate himself. So it's as a person, grown-up person, a well-rich, healthy person, to run ahead and climb the tree and people looking at him, no, he doesn't care. So he responds to that inner call. And then Jesus comes and he sees it would have been over. But then see, the next time Jesus comes and here comes the counselor and looks up. He sees Jesus and he says, and the moment Jesus looks up, everybody looks up and everybody see him now. This man sitting on the tree. Come down. Why should I come down? Come down. Today I have to be in your house.
Wow.
That's something quite unexpected. I just wanted for a fleeting moment to see him, but now he is giving himself into my house.
Wonderful.
So that's the offer. The second comes, the invitation. So Jesus inviting himself into the house. Then he goes in, happy, he comes down, and very happily he opens the house, and then nothing happens. Jesus comes and sits there. Then the initiative comes from Zacchaeus. See, now the house is full. Jesus is there, the disciples are there, and the Pharisees are there out looking at him, and something that has totally changed. A person who was so buried in his wealth now opens up and he says, what does the wealth mean for me anymore? I don't need it all. Then he has an inner freedom. He says, Master, right now I dispose of half of my wealth, give to the poor. I don't need anymore. And if I have cheated anybody, you know and I know I have cheated, I give it fourfold. So that is the response. He is a man freed of his wealth. A man who has become, who's a poor maybe. If he has given half and the fourfold, not much would remain. He doesn't care. And then comes the answer of Jesus. Today salvation has come to this house because this man is also a son of Abraham. So that's the conclusion. Comes to this liberation. So what I see is an inner urge that somehow comes, and he responds to that, and Jesus leads him further and further. So a person who was closed in himself, very wealthy, very rich, but very much hated, unpopular, now becomes a son of Abraham. He lost his wealth, but he found his freedom. So this, I think, is what Jesus is doing. Maybe sister can say the counseling steps and how this can be for today.
Yes.
First, we have to see Zacchaeus' readiness, the desire to see Jesus. And that is a starting of something in his life, something that turned his life turned the corner. He runs and he is willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish what he wants. And it shows determination. It shows willingness to work for it. It shows also a willingness to change. His social status, he is not popular. He is hated by all. And with all the wealth, he was somehow not at peace. He had everything he needed, but no peace. So maybe that is why that restlessness. And sometimes when we feel restlessness, it will drive us to do something constructive. You can go in the destructive way, but also can do it in the constructive way. He decided to do something constructive. So he decided to see Jesus and do whatever he had to do to see him. And he went there. And here is where Jesus responds. Somebody who just wanted to see him. A lot of people wanted to see him because he was a popular guy, miracle worker, and everything else is there. But here, he stops, looks at him, tell him to come down. So Zacchaeus had to come down from the high position where he was. It's humbling himself to be on the equal level with Jesus, with all the other people. Before that, he was afraid of the crowd, but with Jesus calling him, he was no more afraid. The fear is overcome, and so he comes down and stands with him. And the invitation and the care, Jesus did not say, if he will do you this and that, and then I will come and stay in your house. He just said, today I am to stay in your house. That means when you ask for a flower, you get the garden type of thing. Jesus invited himself to his house. And as a rule, Jewish people, the ones in good standing, will not go into a tax collector's house. So this is humbling Jesus also, in the sense to go into a forbidden area. Two things we can see here. When we want to do something good, there may be other obstacles or social taboos. But for Jesus, nothing mattered. Do whatever is needed for this man.
Right.
Like we said before, for him right now, nothing else but Zacchaeus. And all attention is Zacchaeus and what he needed. And Jesus knew that accepting his hospitality, Zacchaeus was in no position to invite Jesus into his house because he did not feel good about himself. He knew he was not a socially accepted person. As a rich man, not even welcome into the kingdom of God. But Jesus invited himself into that place.
Right, right.
So he went there. And as he entered the house, Jesus did not reprimand him, did not scold him, did not ask him where he got all this wealth, accepted him as he is. And that's what a council has to do. Accept a person. Even though Jesus had said, no rich man will enter, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than a rich man to enter heaven. Jesus did not hate rich people. I think what Jesus was hating, attachment to the richness.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that when you are possessed by this wealth, in the sense, your mind is not free to follow the Lord. Your mind is not free. It is a kind of imprisonment. And so that way, Jesus did not hate the rich people. But Jesus hated their attachment to the richness.
Right, right.
And holding on to all of them. So Jesus, what he did was that went and showed him love, showed him care. You are somebody important to me.
Right.
And also you are somebody important to God. God loves you. And Jesus poured out that love onto Zacchaeus. And that brought great changes in him. He immediately became so detached to his wealth. He was no more possessed by the wealth he was having. And so he was willing to give away half of his riches to the poor and then restore whatever he had taken from others, give them back, helping other people.
Right.
In one way, he has accepted the mentality of Jesus in that sense, caring for others. And this change happened not because Jesus asked him to do it. Zacchaeus did it himself.
Right.
It was a decision he made to respond to the love he got from the Lord, to respond to walk through that path. Jesus probably would not have said anything if he did not say that I am going to give away my wealth or anything.
Right.
But when he did it, Jesus said, today peace has come into this house. That's a great peace. Something what Zacchaeus needed badly. Something he did not have. He got it. And that peace, we don't know where it was in the sense what happened to his future life, in the sense the education of the kids or the everyday living. The family had to participate in his poverty in that sense. But as head of the family, he made the decision and he was going to go with that.
Right.
And that is the change that took place in Zacchaeus. And this change took place because Jesus accepted him. Jesus loved him. And in counseling also, in the sense when we accept a person, when we love, we can see changes happening in them. When it is a genuine care for the other person. And their fear goes away and they want to have changes and they want to do things which is good for them.
Right.
And this is the decision usually the client makes in the sense, on their own, not imposed on them.
Correct.
And it is a change from within in the sense. Until then there was, when he goes to a tax collector, okay, give whatever you have there. If you have 10 penny, give me 20 penny. That is where you got it, what he did. He did not care about people until then.
Right. Yeah.
When we are filled with the love, we start to care for other people. And that is a very psychologically healthy situation. As long as I am tied up with myself, it's like tied with the knots. And then I accept myself, then I become free. When I know who I am, what I have, then, okay, this is what it is. I don't care who sees me. I don't need any more mask to wear. I don't need to spend my energy covering up. I can use my energy to do good for others. Okay. And that is freedom. And this is the inner freedom Zacchaeus achieved. And that's where he went on to live in that way.
Another aspect that we see is if we have the counselor, in this case, Jesus is giving a public attention to this person.
Yes.
Knowing his intentions. Does that actually help in case if you have to edify somebody or, to bring them forward?
It's normal tendency in the sense when a person is not publicly accepted.
Right.
We stay away from them.
Correct.
And we are afraid to give them acceptance. We are afraid to show that we approve that person. Jesus was not afraid. There was no fear. If everybody else hates Zacchaeus, no, Zacchaeus, I love you.
Super.
And that is the attitude we have to take in the sense. In a way, as a Christian principle in the sense, it's not the people, all those who are so popular and are so accepted and loved that needs our care. It's the people, those who feel rejected, those who feel down. And you give a helping hand to a person when they are feeling down, that has a value to it.
Like he says, I have come to save that which was lost. So,
yeah. Right.
I think I have to add two more things. As Sister was telling, first thing I came to my mind is the President Pope's attitude. The shepherd should others stink the smell of the sheep. So you don't keep away from the pulpit you preach, but you go to the people. That's what Pope was telling. That's what Jesus was going. He was in a way losing his good name, so to say. He gained for himself a title, a friend of tax collectors, a drunkard, and a friend of tax collector, drunkard, one who is
sinners.
A glutton and a drunkard, and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. So that's one thing Jesus is doing. The second thing that struck me, as Sister was explaining, in the Bible it said, salvation has come today this house. But Sister said peace. And I think either knowingly or unknowingly, there's a very good definition what salvation means. Peace, eirene, shalom. So peace has come to this house means peace has fourfold attitude, the shalom. The peace is my relation with God is set right. I am God. My relation to my neighbor is set right. So the shalom between me and with the nature, the world, that is a peace. And finally, myself. I accept myself. So this fourfold peace is called shalom.
Okay.
And Jesus has said, today salvation has come to this world. And I never it occurred to my mind to translate it by shalom. But somehow sister said, peace has come into this world. What is that? In fact, salvation means peace.
Right.
You are at peace with God, you are at peace with the neighbor, you are at peace with yourself and the nature, and that is the paradise.
Wonderful.
So this is how Jesus restores the paradise. And to the man dying on the cross is that today you will be with me in paradise. So Zacchaeus is given a kind of paradise experience. And this is how the counseling also should lead to accepting, restoring relationships. Okay? So I think that if you want to say a little bit more about this relationship, that is the counselor is trying to re-establish.
With the counselor, yeah.
The counselor should be.
Accepting the person is a great thing to do. And accepting person doesn't mean you changed person, the way you are. And that is inspiring. Very often, when we come into relationship with the people, the attempt is to change that person to my need.
Right.
It's not what the counselor's task. The change is to make you better. Anand is Anand. I don't want Anand to become like me. And I want the best self.
Right.
Best self in you, what you are to be. And when a student come in there and saying, I want that child to be happy, not for myself, not for anything of needing me, but when the child is at peace, they can perform better. When a student is not at peace, in the sense they feel problematic, in the sense it will be difficult for them to concentrate. But they study and they do and they build up a better future. Nothing for me to gain out of it, but for that person, the happiness for that person. That's what the counselor needs in a client, in the sense. Grow into the self you are called to be. In Jungian terms, we will say self-concept, self-actualization.
Right.
Okay, I am called, God has a design for me, and that's my aim. And when I become what God wants me to be, that's when my mind is at peace and I am happy. If I deviate from there, I become restless. My mind is not very happy. So the self-actualization is a very strong process, in the sense something for which we strive all our lives.
Correct. Yeah.
And I have just a small story, in the sense, a man who wanted to work with the soil and to be a farmer. But the parents encouraged him to study, and he studied and he became a professor, a very successful professor in that sense. But he was not happy. Finally, he left his professorship, built a house, and all his books were locked up in an area, and he was working hard in the field. When his child grew up, and he just said, my father is a farmer, never knew. One day, by accidentally, he went to this woman's. All these encyclopedias and books there, he didn't know what it was. Then finally, when he talked to his father, he said, I always wanted to work with soil. But I had studied, I got PhD, and I was in the college professor. That's not what gave me joy. Right. Joy was working with the soil. So whatever, he was called to be a farmer. And he wanted to be a farmer in full sense.
Right.
And that gave him peace. So we cannot, no parents, nobody can decide what is the future for the other person. It is God's call. Which, when you follow, you are at peace.
Right.
And you become that. And this is what Zacchaeus was. Zacchaeus was not just to live like a rich person and there. He was called for something of a higher vocation he had. And until he achieved that, he was not at peace.
Correct. Yeah.
And here Jesus helped him. to get that peace, to get that satisfaction in his lives. And it in another way says, nothing in this world can really give human beings full satisfaction, just as much as reconciliation with God, with others, with the self. This is what brings me peace, nothing else. Because no matter what we get, always aspire for more, always aspire for something else, and feel that emptiness within me. But once I know I am here today, right now, because God had designed this for me, then I am at peace. I don't decide to be somewhere else or do something else.
Okay.
This is what I say. Zacchaeus accomplished here. Finally, he had done what he had to do to get where he wanted to be.
So that brings us to the end of another interesting episode, another dimension of a counselor from the personality of Christ. We understand how he dealt with Zacchaeus, very important points that we discussed in this. We believe that this enriches your walk with the Lord, especially when you're able to go out and use this gift of counseling. Till we meet in another episode, God bless you, and thank you very much for watching these programs.